with everything that happened in the past few years, that conversation of pivot became really, really popular.
And it also taught me a powerful lesson about things not making sense.
Learning how to kind of take those inner knowings or that deeper call to shift and change things.
And I might not know what that reason is right now, and that's the work.
Until you get to that point of, like you said, surrender, and you build that self-trust, it is very difficult to get to that point where you can see out of the logical space and just be like, no, I know that it's my time.
That's something that I learned to do from that as well. Like now, from where I am, I'm like, wow, life is so much better than I could have ever imagined it.
This is Behind the Boss Lady podcast with your host, Shelby St.clair. I'm taking you behind the scenes of soul-led entrepreneurship as I hold space for paradigm-shifting conversations with awakened boss ladies. You're going to hear from women who share the good, the bad, and the ugly of what their journey to success looked like, leaving you with the advice and inspiration you need so that you never give the fuck up on your dreams. Your soul led you here for a reason. Join me every Wednesday as we dive deep into what it means to be an awakened boss lady in your life and business. Hi, Natalie. Welcome to the show. I am so excited for this conversation today and just to talk with you and share you with all of the listeners. I would love to jump right in and get to know you because I know that you have so much to share with everything that you have been through, the path that you have walked, and where you are today as a truly awakened boss lady in your movement, helping just heal and raise the conscious vibration of the planet. So tell us a little bit about you.
I love this question because I love reflection, and I really believe in the power of reflection along the way in our journeys. It builds a lot of self-resilience and self-trust. And I mean, I could go all the way back to like when I was a child and the visions that I used to receive and who I felt I was here to be in the world. And those were some early experiences that really actually shaped who I've become and my business. Like, since I was a kid, I felt very connected to the future, very connected to how things were going to unfold in my lifetime. And it was a really interesting journey that I had as a kid. And the one thing that I really knew for sure was that the traditional path, like the path that society prescribes to this day, and that continues to evolve, but this prescribed path that I saw a lot of other people walking as I was growing up, I knew that it wasn't for me. So I would see people who, like my friends as a child, who would have pretend weddings. Like I remember one of my best friends having a whole pretend wedding for herself in the backyard as this like plaything. And I was like, that's not my path. And I knew that I wasn't going to work in a job. Like I just knew that as a child that I wasn't going to go and work for a company, that I was meant to carve my own path. And when I got to university, I had a lot of opportunities to start doing that. And I had already played with businesses. Like as I was a kid, as I was a teenager, I had already started building small businesses. And so I got to university and I was like, okay, what can I dive into? I went to a very entrepreneurial university in Canada, and that just gave me a lot of opportunity to explore what it meant to build a business. And I started building my first business, media and marketing company, while I was still in school. And that became my quote unquote job when I left university. So I worked as a producer, producing 360-degree documentary and film projects and interactive projects that were the foundation of what has become virtual reality and augmented reality. And that's something I felt very connected to. Like I've always been an innovator. And that led me to start a little blog about my experiences building a company. And that took on a life of its own. And that blog became an international sensation. I ended up getting a book deal for it, and it turned into a book. And then that turned into 3 more books and workbooks and a whole virtual business incubator that I led for women around the world for over a decade. So that was something that really got me into coaching. And as I started to work with more leaders and I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, I could really see the things that were blocking them. And it was so clear to me. And I wanted to have not just the strategic mind and the ability to work with somebody on a plan, but I wanted to be able to go much deeper into what I saw within them that was holding them back. That led me down a path of training in a lot of different modalities. And then, I'm always just in the listening of life. I'm always just listening for what wants to come forth. And so that led to me weaving all of it into a framework that we teach today at Coaching Evolved. So other coaches and teachers and healers wanted to learn this methodology. So I was like, okay, I'm listening, and created that. And so I've been doing that in addition to my work with entrepreneurs and leaders. And that's a summary of the last, 37 years or so. But
Well, what a journey. I love that you said that you are a listener. I think that that is something that so many people detach from, right? We come and we are placed on this earth with that innate knowing and that intuitive touch and that skill to listen and honor ourselves. And because of society and the way of life and how we are just raised and everything that we go through, we detach from that at some point, right? And it leads to us not trusting that part and not trusting those pings that come in as our intuitive knowing. And instead of listening, it's like we just push them away. So the question that came up for me as you were sharing all that is, what gave you the belief or that innate knowing to not walk the path that you saw everybody else going down, and instead you choosing to listen to self?
Ooh, I love this question. And I actually think it was a lot of things, but I'm just going to share the things that come to mind first, because I think those are always the most potent ones. And when I was born, I had a very traumatic birth, and forceps went through my face. They thought I wasn't going to make it. I lost a lot of blood. And it was obviously horrifying for my parents. I'm the firstborn. This was their first experience having a baby. They were young. And I had this scar on my face. And it's actually only really started to fade in the last 10 years or so. But growing up, scars are like sort of a purpley color, like bluish color, right? And it stayed that way for a really long time. And so I would hear from people constantly, like every day, what's that on your face?
Mm.
And what happened to you? And for me, it was a reminder. Like I would look in the mirror, and even though I was self-conscious about this scar sometimes, it was my daily reminder that I must be here for a reason,
Mm.
that I must have survived that for a reason. And it's interesting because many years later, I was on one of my first trips to Bali, and I met with this Balayan healer. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Balayan healer, but they are so tapped in. It's insane. And they sometimes do funny things. Like they have these sticks and they'll poke at your feet a little bit and they'll touch like different acupressure points on your body. And it's sometimes like, what are you doing? What's going on right now? And just by poking around at my feet, And he like put his fingers in my ears and he told me that I had this really traumatic birth and told me the ways that this had been manifesting in my life, how the energy of it was manifesting in my life. And when he said that, it's interesting because something like really shifted in me. And he told me that when you have in your lifetime, when anyone has a near death experience, it's a very powerful activator for people. It's often a turning point. It's often a rebirth, like you are rebirthed in that moment and you have this new outlook on your entire life and existence. And he said, when you have that experience, when you are born, when you are like really, really young, you have this really powerful rebirth and you just see the world from that point through a very different set of eyes. And so because you had that experience when you were born, you came into the world already had like you were birthed and you were rebirthed almost instantly, which gave you this purity in the way that you see the world and like a connection to your innocence and a deep compassion and love for humanity. And there was something about that that really resonated for me. And I think from that, and because of the traumatic birth, I actually had a lot of experiences along the way after that when I was very young. Like I had to go to the hospital, they had to keep checking on certain things. They thought I had brain damage. And I just knew that it was all for a reason. And I felt so protected as a child. And I felt like this is just my path. And I think that built a lot of trust and it built a lot of faith. And there's something in that for me, like to this day. So I can't really explain like why I was able to just be in the listening, but I do feel like it started when I was a child and it just didn't stop. Like there have been times where I've maybe gone off track a little bit. There have been times where I've let the noise of the world drown out that inner voice, but that inner voice has been very, very strong for as long as I can remember. And I'm very grateful for it. I'm grateful
Yeah.
that it's been so loud and clear for me. And the more I listen, the more I have just such a deep relationship to it.
Yeah. That's incredible. We all enter onto this planet with a purpose, right? There's a divine reason that we are here. There's a divine reason that just like you just shared that you went through that and you came out of it with so much grace and inner knowing and self-trust and belief despite the moments where there might have been that self-consciousness coming in and trying to take over, right? Or other people trying to take your power away by putting you down and asking you questions and making this part of you something that's wrong with you when it's not at all. It's the part that has truly allowed you to step into your purest, most divine form and walk the path and the journey that you're meant to walk. So, what a beautiful just story of that resilience
Mm.
that you entered into this world with. And now that you lead from a place of just power and purpose with, and just knowing that you are meant to listen and that you will be divinely guided. So as you went through all that and as you tapped in and as you're like, okay, I'm a listener and I'm going to continue listening and I'm going to follow the path. And yeah, maybe I stray off course for a moment, but I'll find my way back. What would you say were those moments when you maybe didn't trust in yourself and it led you off path, and then there was that kind of like, okay, you know what? This isn't the right thing. I gotta course correct and get back over here." Are there any like big moments for you that you found yourself drifting off and then had to come back onto that path of just knowing and enlightenment?
Yeah, for sure. When I was building the blog that I mentioned, so I had this huge blog called She Takes on the World. It was also the name of my first book. And I had a YouTube show and ended up doing a series with Entrepreneur Magazine for that as well. And there was all this momentum. And I had also started that in my early 20s. And as I was going through these experiences, as I was traveling the world and I was really connecting to the truth of who I am, who I know myself to be, beyond the labels, beyond worldly identity, I started to feel like I had created this persona online and that it didn't encompass all of me. Like I
Mm,
wanted to be seen for all of me. And it also felt like there were parts that I wasn't safe sharing online either, and things that people maybe wouldn't understand. And so I maintained for a while this persona that felt like, okay, this is this brand. Like this is who I've created myself to be in this particular niche. But there was something that started to feel out of alignment with that,
mm,
especially the more I was growing, the more I was training in these different modalities. And then as I started to just get older, because I ran that for about 12 years, and who I was when I started it versus who I was by the end of it, very, very different versions of me. And I had shed so much along the way. And I just knew that it had to go because I had received a very clear message when I was still living in Canada that my life was about to dramatically change, that like
mm,
everything as it was going to be burned away. And that was a relationship I was in. It was where I was living in Canada. It was the businesses that I had to that point. It was like, it's all going to go to
mm,
make space for a new chapter and something that you're meant to step into. And I ended up letting the relationship go. I ended up moving to the US and I'm now in Los Angeles. And the one thing that I held on to was this business She Takes on the World and this persona. And it started getting harder and harder to do that, to the point where it was just a breaking point. And there were a few things that happened in my life that were very, very challenging that made it very clear that it was time to let that go. But it's still painful to let go of something and to grieve that thing fully, even if we know it's no longer right for us. Like we
yes.
can leave a relationship and we know it's the right thing to do, and it can still bring us into the deepest pain that we then have to navigate through.
Mm,
We can leave a business and know that it's the right thing to do, but it can still come with so much grief. So I
mm,
really just let myself be in that grief for a while as well before the new started to like crystallize and take form. But that one was really, really tough for me. And it was hard because I also had, so going back to your question, I had a lot of mentors, I had a lot of people in my life who were like, this is a 7-figure business. Like, this is a
mm,
thriving company. Why would you let that go? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I let the noise of those external opinions and feedback and guidance drown out what I knew was true for me. And I mean, I did this for a couple years before
mm,
I actually ended up winding it down and making that space that I had felt called to because it did not make logical sense. Like it absolutely, Shelby, made no
yeah.
logical sense on paper. And yet now it all makes sense in hindsight. So the
Mm,
lessons that I learned from that were really learning to trust when you've got to let your intuition eclipse what feels logical,
mm,
and
mm,
letting my intuition just guide that process and really trusting that when I'm feeling called to something, it is for a reason. And I might not know what that reason is right now. And that's the work of trust and surrender. And
Mm.
the more you do that, the more self trust you build. And I think that self trust is actually one of the keys to success, to living your purpose, to living in your most aligned way in every area of your life. And then it also taught me a powerful lesson about things not making sense. And I think it was Steve Jobs who said that you only understand things by going back and connecting the dots. You can never connect the dots when you're still in the experience.
Yeah.
And that's something that I learned to do from that as well. Like now, from where I am, I'm like, wow, life is so much better than I could have ever imagined it for myself. It's beyond anything that I ever strategized for my life and for my business. And I just couldn't see that at the time. It was just beckoning to me, but it took so much for me to let it all go. And now I'm like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just had to let it all go. And there was something so much better waiting on the other side. But
Right.
ah,
That's always how it is, right? And it's so easy to remain in that logical state, to just have to like think our way through it while we're in it, even though we're having that intuitive call to get out of it. And we're just like, no, that doesn't make sense. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what makes sense. It's making money. It's made me who I am today, even though who we are today is so far detached from the person that we were at the start and at the beginning of things. And I think that so many business owners struggle with that, right? With everything that happened in the past few years, that conversation of pivot became really, really popular, right? And learning how to pivot and learning how to shift and learning how to kind of take those inner knowings or that deeper call to shift and change things. But until you get to that point of, like you said, surrender and you build that self trust, it is very difficult to get to that point where you can see out of the logical space and just be like, no, I know that it's my time to pivot and shift to change things because on the other side of this is so much more. It can
yeah.
be so difficult to get there. So let's just say, because I know that there's people that are listening that are in that right now, right? That have that kind of knowing, they're getting all the signs, they have that intuitive hit. They're like, where I'm at and what I'm doing right now, it's not aligned. It doesn't feel good. It's not breathing life into me every day when I wake up. Like instead of being excited to do the thing, I'm dreading to do the thing, but I have to stay in it because this is what I'm known for. How would you guide somebody in that moment that might be listening to us talk about this right now and they're having that kind of drop in of this sounds like me and this sounds like my life. I don't know how to get to the other side.
Yeah. Well, because my approach to coaching is very somatic, I'm going to give everyone listening a guided somatic practice, which is,
Yes.
and do this if you're driving right now, like come back to this later, like do this when you've got a little bit of space to really like be in your experience and not distracted by anything else. So, we can put ourselves in the space of like imagining you're standing on the edge, like you're standing on the edge of your comfort zone. And this comfort zone is where you are right now. It's your present embodiment. It is how you're showing up based on what has been true for you to this point. It's based on vows and commitments that past versions of you have made. It's based on what you feel safe asking for in your life, what you feel safe doing for work. It's how you've kept yourself safe in relationships and a lot of other contributing factors as well. And you're feeling this call to go beyond. And the invitation is to first recognize that it does take a lot of courage to go beyond. It takes so much courage to go beyond because we protect ourselves in so many different ways. Like what you think is something sabotaging your success or your way forward, I invite you to reframe that as protecting yourself. There are so many ways you've been protecting yourself. And that's a beautiful function that we have. And there's more that you want. You want to take that leap. What has to be true for you to be able to take that leap? What has to be true? And how can you create the safety within yourself as well? How can you cultivate more safety within yourself? And then I want you to really drop into that feeling of like being here in this comfort zone, like maybe even playing small. You can even like take the shape of playing small and you're on this edge. And what is it going to take for you to leap? What is it going to take for you to leap? And just trust the first thing that comes to mind. How can you give that to yourself? How can you create that? And it can be little steps. We don't have to take a leap all at once. We don't have to burn everything down all at the same time. It's okay if it's just a step toward it. But every step you take, no matter how small, is rewarded. And then if you're like physically standing or you're physically in this, or even if you're just visualizing it, I invite you, when you feel ready, to actually take that leap. Actually take that leap. And what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling when you take that leap into what's been calling you, into what you know is possible? And really let that land. And then giving yourself a self hug, like wrapping your arms around yourself or placing one hand on your forehead and one hand on your chest. Just affirm your safety, that it is safe for you to play big, to play in your fullest, to live your richest life, to follow the whispers of your heart, to follow the calling of your soul. It is safe. It's what you are here for, and you are divinely protected and guided every step of the way. And really feel that truth. And then the invitation is to take this, to continue to anchor this embodiment into every cell of your being. You can do that as a little morning practice or set some alarms on your phone to check in throughout the day, to come back to this embodiment, come back to the embodiment of what you know is possible and what is for your highest.
That was beautiful.
Mm.
I love practices like that when you really get to be in it and when you give yourself that moment to fully feel it, right? Stepping into my comfort zone is always such a powerful realization and visualization for me because anytime I go there, right, it's like seeing the current state of where I am. And there's just this fine line, right? There's this like fine line of I could take this small mini step to like test the waters outside of my comfort zone. And it's like this deep, dark hole that you just feel like you're going to fall down. Or it's like you just take that big trusting step over that line, and it's the expansive life that has everything that you could envision or dream of, and all of the feelings of just goodness and power. And it's so beautiful to be able to see that. And it's such a reflection of how also like powerful we are as human beings, right? Because I truly do believe in the saying, like, if you believe it, you can achieve it, right? If you see it, you can achieve it. It's just a matter of allowing a kind of that mind and that body connection to come full circle and into play, of allowing ourselves to feel that expansion while we're telling our mind, like, that's where I'm meant to be. It's not scary over there. It feels good. That's the life I want. Right.
And
And
we
just
have to entrain that.
like,
Like
yeah,
it has to be entrained in us until it becomes fully embodied. Like I look at it as when you download a program onto your computer, it is absolutely useless if it's sitting there and you have not installed it. So
yeah,
you can have this vision, you can have this calling, but if you haven't installed that into every cell of your being, well, it's not really going to take you anywhere. But as you do that more and more, like that's where the magic is. That's where the
yeah,
magic is. And when you come into that full alignment, like how you are being is informing what you are seeing.
yeah.
How you are being is what you are seeing. And the more you get into that practice of just being and like prime that in the morning, like have a little practice. I like to do it as I'm opening my eyes in the morning out of bed. Like first thing is priming the day. And this is from one of my very first teachers, actually, one of my very first spiritual teachers years and years ago, talked about how important it is how you get out of bed in the morning. Your first step on the floor, make it so intentional. Like you are stepping into a new day, step into it with your full power, with your full mindfulness, with your
Yes.
full knowing of who you are, and it just will change your day. And it's
Mhm.
true. I still do it today, years later, and it has changed the way that my day goes. On occasion, I don't do it. Like every once in a while when I'm traveling or I'm out of my routine, I'll go a couple days without doing that. And I notice that it feels
Mhm.
off when I don't
Yep.
time my day in that way and like step into my like fullness first thing in
Yeah,
the morning.
it's so true. That's one of the first practices that I go through when I'm working with somebody in a one-to-one capacity. It's like the first thing we got to do, we have to look at how you start your day, as that plays out through then every other experience and situation that you have. If you enter the day feeling strong and good, and like you're saying, primed for the day, but not only that, you're actually integrating this process of being who you desire to be, being the person that has the life that you envision for yourself. It becomes that natural attract, that like law of attraction, right? That's where the manifestation truly comes into play, because we're being what we want. And then the universe says, okay, you hold the capacity to actually have this, right? You're not just saying it and wishing it and hoping it and then going on with your day and being like, it'll never happen for me. I can't this, that, and the other. Like you just are fully in that state of belief of like, I am empowered and I feel good and I'm doing the thing and I'm going to achieve everything that I want. And that's when life feels really, really good. That's seriously, like you said, when the magic happens. I use that line in my business a lot. Like, when you do this, that's when the magic happens. That's when the turn comes. That's when you step into this flow state and you're just receiving and you're getting it all in a way that feels so stinking good.
I know that
Now
you
I'm
have quite a routine as well. I know that your morning, I'm always impressed to hear what you do in the morning, especially having kids
yeah.
and what you do from like, I think it's 5:30 or something, where
Yeah.
you're in your process and you like just get into that state for the day. And then sometime after that, it's like, oh, and then I go into playtime.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Like that's a
so
lot that you do before
necessary.
playtime.
Right. But it's like I needed that for myself, right? Because there was that moment of transitioning from just business owner and being able to run my day in a way of just being and getting to do whatever I wanted to do at any time during the day to then realizing, holy crap, like it's not just me anymore. There's this tiny little human that I somehow have to honor and take care of and nourish and spend time with in amongst taking care of myself and my business. And it was like, how am I going to step into this place where it feels good and I'm not overwhelmed, but I feel like I'm honoring myself. And so that transition was obviously hard because I wasn't ever before person that woke up early. Like I literally prided myself in the fact of like I sleep into whenever my body wants to wake up. And then I get into work mode and like I get to rule my life. And then there came that switch of like, Shelby, you got to get it together. Like you're not honoring yourself, you're not taking care of yourself. So what shift are you going to make? And it was just a matter of just like we talked about, right? Becoming that version of myself who got to honor and take care of herself in the morning by waking up and being in that powerful state and pouring into me so that then anything else that came through the day, it was just like, all right, this isn't a big deal. We just get to roll with it. Right. Cause it could be so hard. And I see this so often with mothers. You get so worked up by your child's emotions and what they're experiencing because they're these tiny little humans trying to figure out what it means to live. And when we first take care of ourselves, it's like it makes it easier to take care of these little humans who have no idea what they're doing because we're just like, okay, like I see you, I love you, let's give you what you need because I'm already taken care of. So it really is starting the day off right and doing those things makes such a vast difference. So I love that you took us through that embodiment piece. And then you really made it clear how important it is to make it a practice because that's when the shifts come, right? We so often just like infiltrate our mind with knowledge and then we don't do anything with it. And then
Yeah.
we wonder why nothing is happening.
Yeah. And I was talking about this in my book, The Rituals, where I'm a big believer in just making all of life, like all of life can be a ritual and ceremony if you treat it that way. And while it's amazing to take that time, like you're an amazing example of someone who's like just so committed to her morning practice and making it something that really fills you up. And I so honor and respect that. And for people who feel like, well, I don't know if I can do that Shelby 5:30 a.m. thing, there are a lot of ways that you can weave ritual and weave practice into your day by stacking rituals and habits and really healthy routines or priming yourself or stepping into your full embodiment while you're doing other things. Like if you're brushing your teeth anyway, why not bring in something that's also really affirming or bring in some type of like prayer or mantra, right? We can like brush our teeth while looking in the mirror and also noticing all the things that we love about ourselves and like really using that time to pour into ourselves. If we're taking a shower anyway, turn your shower into a ritual. Turn your shower into your practice because these are things that you're doing anyway. When I'm cooking, like cooking for me is a whole ritual and a whole embodiment practice because I make it so we can bring a lot of intentionality into the things that we're just doing anyway. And then, of course, that carved out time, like you do so ritualistically in the morning, is also very beneficial. I think how we start our day is really essential.
Yeah, I love that you said that because there is that sense of automatic overwhelm that people can feel into when you talk about kind of changing your schedule and creating these habits and doing the rituals and really honoring and knowing that you truly can make it in whatever way that you so desire. It doesn't have to be early in the morning. It truly can be while you're brushing your teeth. You know, another thing I love to tell my clients, anytime they look in the mirror, and Mel Robbins shares this, right? You high five yourself. Like anytime you see a mirror, you just high five yourself. It's an immediate boost in self-confidence. You're like, yeah, girl, like you go get it. Let's do the damn thing. We got this, right? Or just looking in the mirror and just telling yourself as you look in your own eyes, I love you, right? Sometimes we just need to give ourselves those things to just get that spike, that boost of confidence, to just give ourselves what we need to get through the day feeling really good. So I know that you have something connected to your book that you are wanting to share with our audience. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that and what it is.
Oh, yeah. So I developed this ritual and practice called futuring. And futuring combines a little bit of like NLP and hypnosis and visualization into really starting to connect to and embody those future visions fully. So you can come on over to nataliemacneil.com and grab that if you want to develop a futuring practice. And then, that will take you into lots more goodies and resources and things that will help you to embody the future that you're here to live into.
How exciting. Yes, everyone, go into the show notes, grab that, because when we allow ourselves to step into that place of seeing it and creating it and doing that work, like we just talked about with Natalie through this, and really just hearing her story of how she embodied that listening ear and that trust and stepped into this place of just inner resilience and knowing, and allowed that to lead her path. You can too. It doesn't matter where you are, you get to step onto that path and you get to become that woman who is creating the life and the business of her dreams, centered around who you desire to be in your everyday life. So, Natalie, thank you so much for this conversation. It was so enlightening. It was so good. I loved hearing your story and just the gift that you are to this world and the work that you're doing and everything that you have been doing for over a decade now. And I just can't wait to continue to watch what you create from here on out as you continue to listen and honor yourself. So, where can everybody find you online?
Yeah, so come on over to nataliemacneil.com and would love to stay connected there, and also on Instagram at Natalie MacNeil. Also, if you come and follow me on Instagram, I would love to hear if there is a big takeaway or aha moment or something that you're committed to from this episode with me and Shelby today, which I've been so grateful to be here in this conversation. Let me know what that was on Instagram. Like, send me a DM and let me know what your commitment is from this and what you've taken away. I always love hearing from you.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for opening your space for people to just drop in and have that conversation with you and share. I am just so grateful. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being so open. Thank you for sharing all of yourself. Thank you for pouring into us and guiding us through that just little bit of embodiment work and helping us visualize and see ourselves outside of that comfort zone. It really was beautiful, and I'm so grateful for you, and I cannot wait to stay connected even more.
Thank you, Shelby. Such an honor.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode on Behind the Boss Lady podcast. Be sure to follow me over on Instagram at the Shelby St.clair and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a review or share with me what your biggest takeaway was. I can't wait to connect with you more, and I will see you next week.